Yes, sir. Thank you.
This call is now being recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. The title taken for study is Dyslexia, a language disorder. Is it a medical model or a social model? Is Brian a clown in his class? So, the novel taken for study is My Name is Brain. My Name is Brian by Jenny Beatoncourt. She is an American author and script writer, and she is best known for his Pony Pals series. And she has received National Psychological Award for Excellence in the Media and Children's Choice Award from the International Reading Association. And this work, My Name is Brian, is published in 1993. So when it comes to dyslexia, I went and searched personalities with dyslexia, great personalities like Albert Einstein, Beethoven, and Leonardo da Vinci, and the great man who drawn the Vitruvian Man's drawing, and Robbie Williams and Jamie Oliver, my personal favorite, and William Smith, and many other personalities with dyslexia. So even Steve Jobs of Apple, and he is a personality with dyslexia. So this is the cover page of my work because when I was writing preparing paper, my sister suddenly asked me why you strike out the word brain, and why you are making mistake in the title itself, and then I showed her that no, title is itself, the name brain is striked out, was striked out by the author itself. So I want to make that clear. The myth and misconception of dyslexia, and all children with dyslexia are reverse letters. That is not true. Dyslexia has various kinds, and for example, when it takes phonological dyslexia, the difficulty in decoding or assembling words based on their sounds. Then we have surface dyslexia, where people cannot read words, and for example, even we have rapid naming deficient dyslexia. Then it is a poor use of sight words. Sight words, people will search for the exact word to use in a certain places. So then we have the double dysphagia dyslexia, where we have more than one kind of dyslexia. For example, we have dyscalculia, the difficulty with math. So as I'm from literature background, me and mathematics will not go hand in hand forever. So I know that, and sometimes I feel that why is I'm also a person with dyscalculia sometimes. So we have other left-right disorder, and people have the trouble telling from trouble telling or reading from left to right. So then we will move for the next myth or misconception. Then dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. That is true. That statement is true. And the third point is dyslexia only affect boys. That is not true. When I was discussing with my research scholars, and when I was discussing with some other people near my house, I was discussing with dyslexia. They told all these points that they had a misconception regarding dyslexia. That's why I have to make it clear that dyslexia will not affect only boys; it will also affect both boys and girls. And I would like to explain what is dyslexia. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin, and it is characterized by difficulties with accurate or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. So these difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of a language. So this paper is completely on dyslexia, so it will not be complete without looking to the history of dyslexia. So in 1887, German Rudolf Berlin uses the term dyslexia for the first time to explain the problems faced during readings in the school by the children. Then in 1905, W.E. Browner made this term dyslexia in the US until 1930s in the US. They have not talked about dyslexia, the exact word. Then there came the law 1985. Even before W.E. Brunner, there was a dyslexia law passed in Texas. Then 1996, this mental health team identifies region of the brain that works differently in people who have dyslexia. Then in 2005, Yale's University identified a gene association with dyslexia. This is of completely a medical type of history we have when it comes to dyslexia. So moving to the next thing, we have the elementary and the secondary level of dyslexia. So elementary level will have the usual thing which we know as what exactly dyslexia is. So I don't want to repeat the thing which I have already explained it to you. So I will move to the secondary level of dyslexia. So difficulty with reading comprehension and math skills, and trouble with open-ended test skill. And they completely, people with dyslexia, on research we came to know that they completely dislikes reading and writing. So the spells the same word differently in the same documents sometimes. So trouble following classroom discussion and expressing thoughts out loud. So these were the secondary model of dyslexia. So the vortex of dyslexia will always starts from trigger and ends in hopelessness, and will move to the, so it will create a kind of anxiety in the people, and because of an anxiety, people will feel stress and avoidance, memory and attention disruptions, and catastrophic thoughts and hopelessness. Then moving to the next and social model or medical model, which I have pointed out in my title itself. But before going to the medical and social model of disability, I would like to say that exactly what people from the disability theorist side, veterans from disability theorist, talked about what exactly disabled people are. And Wilkerson and McRover, a veteran in disability studies, they says that disabled people are infantilized, constructed as helpless, and viewed as asexual. Then we have this person, Aberley, and he says that disability is recognized as a phenomenon of cultural, political, and socio-economic conditions. So they, everybody had a term, everybody have a connection, saying that there is a great role in that society should play, society is playing when it comes to disability. And Dan Goodley, the one who wrote the Psychology of Disability, a very excellent book when it comes to psychology of disability, especially, and he says that disability studies dislodge disability from its medicalized and moral origin. So disability is a cultural concept, he says. And then following all this theorist, then we have the Disabled People International Organization. They say that impairment is different from disability. I'm just reading out the definition by Disabled People International Organization. They say that this impairment is functional limitation within the individual caused by physical, memory, or sensory impairment. So I would like to stress that within the individual is impairment. What is disability is, I'm again quoting the exact definition by DPI. So what they say is disability is loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in the normal life of the community on an equal level with others due to physical and social barriers, they say. So moving to the main concept of what is social and medical model, you would like to know. Uh, uh, yes, that is actually the box which I have given in the red color is medical model, and the white is in the social model. So needs and wants to be cured, that is the medical model, and needs and wants to be accepted. The society should take a chance, give a chance to accept the people whom they feel that they are marginalized, and to some extent, people, the so-called normal human beings like us, we marginalized them for some reason or other. So it needs decision made about them by experts. So it is like completely a medical model. What exactly the doctor has to say about disability, and what if I am a disabled person, what exactly the doctor has to say about my deafness or about my blindness or so other thing. So this is what exactly I want to say. What is the difference between social model and the medical model of disability? Then yeah, when it comes to social model, Mike Oliver is a, a veteran in the social model of disability, and he wrote that social work with disabled people. And he says that the people with any form of accredited impairment are disabled by an unjust and uncaring society. So this comes under the category of social model of disability. And moving to Paul Hunt in his book 1966, The Experience of Disability, he says that the problem of disability lies not only in the impairment of function and its effect on us individually, but the more importantly in our relationship with normal people. He says he is also a person who comes under the category of disabled people. So he has certain experience in the life of him, and he wrote that the experience of disability. So sorry, moving to the medical model, I would like to point out that medical model of disability was from the psychiatry literature, and psychiatrist Thomas Szasz coined the term in the 1950s. Then this medical model of disability is also known as biocentric model of disability. And as I say that it is purely the medical definition of disability, and they consider the disability as something wrong with person's mind or body. So it has nothing to do with society. It is completely between a doctor and people and disabled people, and it is slightly related to medical humanities, what nowadays people talks about. Then I would like to point out the psychology of disabled or differently abled people. Why I'm changed from disabled to differently abled is I've taken the study American novel, and Jenny Betancourt is from America, and the people from America usually will not address people with disability as disabled people. They will address them as differently abled people. So in our nation also we should change from disabled to differently abled people to reach heights and to help them throughout the journey of their life. So when it comes to psychology, psychology includes humanism, cognitivism, behaviorism, psychoanalysis, and to some extent, or to some great extent, existentialism and biogenic. So even when it comes to psychological process, we have social isolation, autonomy, and response of others. So Dan Goodley, as I said, the one who wrote the psychology of disability, had talked about functionalist psychology of disability and phenomenological psychologist of disability. When he talks about functionalist psychology of disability, and he says that it is a psychology of it is a psychology of a mind, that is the doctrine that what makes something a mental state of a particular type does not depend on its internal constitution. Again, functionalist psychology will not affect the people internally. Yeah, if I am a disabled people, those things I will not take. My disability will not affect me psychologically. But when it comes to phenomenological psychology of disability, he says that this is the subjective experience, and this theory has the place that it questions an individual's current experiences of themselves and their world at the center of analysis of personality, functioning, and change. So, phenomenological talks about the people also include the society. So, when it comes to psychological orientation, I have four points to mention. That is the functionalist science, discipline of the individual, treatment of the individual, and handmaiden of society. Moving to the next thing, when it comes to again for psychology of disability, we have Dan Goodley and these two people, Caroline and Nancy M. Crew, on psychology of disability. They says that they talked about disability experience and devaluation, and sometimes at the last point they talked about acceptance. If someone comes and asks me about my disability, I will say, yeah, I will pray to God and I will help. I ask him help. But when he comes to know that, yeah, this is my state and I'm what I am, then I will go to the point of acceptance. Then I would like to point out all these theorists who are not in the uh, field of disability studies, but and I was looking to other theories, I can include all these theorists like Deleuze and Guattari, who talked about assemblages in their book A Thousand Plateau, where they says that a comp yeah, a component parts are not stable or fixed, rather than can be displaced or replaced. So Edward says constructing other. All these things can be included in the disability studies also. Karl Marx alienation, Michael Foucault's power, biopolitics and normativity, and Jack Lacan's fragmented body. And yes,
Miss
sir.
Salma,
Yes.
thank you so much. It's an excellent presentation.
Thank
And
you, sir.
I have a small question for you.
Yeah.
I just heard that dyslexia happens to be a lifelong complication.
Yeah.
Would you care to expand on that?
Yes, sir. I agree with you. It is a lifelong complication. But when it comes to uh, the training and the treatment, when we think of inclusive education, where we can train so many people on leaving out the dyslexia and starting a great work. So when you look at my last slide, there was a person who was brain, actually the protagonist of the novel is a person with dyslexia, but at the end he will write a complete poem, and he will not sit alone in the journalist class where they have to write the essay. It will affect lifelong, sir, but we can take steps to make it out somehow.
Ma'am, can I ask
Thank
you one question?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, is this dyslexia is like is it a curable disease?
Yeah,
It's
that's
some
why I'm
disorder.
asking.
It is a curable.
Yeah, that's why I'm answering. This is again the same question which sir also asked. Yeah, you have a point that dyslexia cannot be cured, but we can improve the condition of dyslexia. It is that it will have a process of lifelong process, but when it comes to when it comes to the practice, when we think of inclusive education, again I would say, when we give practice, when we give, for example, a tape recorder, as Brian from his teacher will get, he will go to home and sit and revise and rewrite all the things and write it for 5 times, 10 times. Then at the end he wrote an essay and he wrote a poem in the work. So dyslexia cannot be cured, but we can improve the stage of dyslexic people.
So if we give them practice means finally they will also become like normal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Even my guide, who's a person, is also a dyslexic person in his childhood, but now he's excelling in his career.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salma. It's an excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Now, I would like to invite Mr. Dr. Parul Yadav, Associate Professor of Amity School of Liberal Arts, Amity University in Haryana. And the title which he is going to present is Shaw's Concept of Superman in Man and Superman. Dr. Parul Yadav.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just share my PPT. Yes, I'm not able to share.
Ms.
Sir,
Parul
its
Yadav.
share option is disabled. I am not able to
That's
share.
that's not a big issue, Ms. Parul Yadav. You can give a presentation.
Okay. So the topic of my presentation is Shaw's concept of superhuman in Man and Superman. So Bernard Shaw has written his philosophy of dynamism of life force as an evolutionary cosmic action plan in the prefaces of his plays, and particularly in his play Man and Superman. So these prefaces deal with the formative influences on Bernard Shaw of world's great pioneers in relation to his creed of creative evolution, on which his concept of Superman is based. So his theories of life force and creative evolution has been discussed in detail in his prefaces, and he frankly accepts that the evolutionary appetite on will is not a new idea, and he goes back to the great thinkers of the past to trace out the idea from its very origin. So his theory of Superman is the result of his deep study of the Greece and German philosophers. So it will be a good idea to understand first the philosophy of the German philosophers to understand the concept of Superman. So it was Nietzsche's Übermensch that influenced George Bernard Shaw to use dynamism of life force in his all creative works. He has frankly admitted it in one of his. So this concept of the Superman is an outcome of the Superman of various ideas propounded by the thinkers of Europe in different periods and different forms. In Greece, paganism it was an advanced thought towards supermanhood. So, according to Greece paganism, the shifting of interest from nature to man led the study of human mind and human conduct. Then Socrates, after whom the humanism of sophists reached its zenith, emphasized on the quest of inner virtues. His slogan was Know Thyself, because he believed that he who knows himself knows the divine. It was the religion of the sophists, Saint Augustine and Saint Thomas had full faith in self realization. They believed that man's finite nature has a supernatural end. Power of will was supreme for them. Descartes believed that man is important not due to his body but due to his mind, and it is mind which can give him perfection. Kant likewise made knowledge an unquestionable object, and Fichte considered self consciousness to be the secret of man's existence upon earth. So with a brief study of their historical survey, we come to know clearly that the philosophers enriched the world with a sense of self-consciousness of knowledge, which is purely subjective, and also of God as the perfect being and the ultimate reality. But it is a matter of regret that these philosophers have hardly presented a clear-cut vision as to how man, an imperfect being, can become perfect, whether such a transition is possible on this earth, and what indeed are the different ways and means by which man can reach divinity. So, in this presentation, I try to answer these questions like what is the concept of superhuman, how superhuman is different from other living beings, and how it is being portrayed or described in Man and Superman. Sorry. So we may have some hope in this direction in the philosophy of Superman from Schopenhauer, a great German philosopher who gave a new light in this direction. So Schopenhauer considered the world as idea and as will. So according to Schopenhauer, it is the consciousness of the individual which is important and not the objective world he sees or feels. The world is identical with his own will. Sorry. So Schopenhauer also says that there is a difference between man's consciousness and that of other animals and fellow creatures. Man's consciousness has the power of reflection with which he takes a resolute step, chooses with profound definiteness between several objectives which confront his will. This perception is man's reason, which is its primer move. Willpower gives man knowledge of his own existence. The body is individual's will, for he can make it good or bad, devilish or divine, according as he will. Will give him power to stand superior to his body, and the nature of will is free and independent, and its action is blind. For example, the animals are seen destroying each other for their livelihood. They eat plants and are themselves eaten by the bigger animals and even human beings. The nature of will is endless striving. So this will inspires men. He requires knowledge, rational as well as sensuous. So in his play Man and Superman, Bernard Shaw has given his conception of Superman. He wants his contemporaries to proceed incessantly without looking back, and as there is no end to the march of evolutionary will, the one species of Superman will be superseded by the next generation and soon. So in this play, he refers to Francois Voltaire, who was a great champion in religion, and the playwright's iconoclast in religion bears testimony to his association with the great talented man. He is 18th century great genius. He used to say, if there were no God, it would be necessary to invent him. But Shaw believes that it is idle to depend on a conventional God. Man should realize his inner self and try to elevate it. So the dramatist has his full faith that life is not a bed of roses, but life is a bed of thorns. And a person coming out of the difficulties of life is like an iron which is sent into the fire to become steel. Shaw wants to say that life, after constant slips and advances, after many trials and errors, arrive at mankind, which is no doubt its latest creation, but by no means final. Thus, therefore, outward beauty, strength, or gigantic do not help man to be Superman. His mental superiority is more important than his physical beauty or strength. Shaw gives more importance to philosophical thinking for a better life than more physical existence based on pleasure hunting. If one has no life power, he is sure to be doomed, because without decisive instinct, one has only a hard instinct and therefore no self respect. Such a man can never be a contemplative man and can achieve anything if he simply blindly imitates without using the power of his brain. A self conscious man will learn about his dormant capabilities, which, when he finds out by means of thinking, he will utilize to great advantage. So Shaw has elaborately illustrated his idea of brain as the most important of the divine gifts to mankind. Brain is the last gift to man by God. It is on point of intellect alone that man has raised at one all the man has raised at one all his ancestors and imposed himself on all other creature of the world. Um, so the dramatist has his full faith that life is not all music or poetry or a source of pleasure. In Man and Superman, he through character Ramsden says to Octavius that life is not all music or poetry or plays and poems. It is something else. Moreover, life is not a bed of roses. Sorry. So it is on point of intellect alone that man has raised above all his ancestor and imposed himself on all other creature of the world. The Don Juan of Man and Superman is a votary of brain power. He has the capacity to enjoy and understand life. In the play, the devil observes wittily that man has misused his mental gift to a lamentable extent. Bernard Shaw, in the play, appreciated Don Juan's doctrine of brain power. He discards devil's argument of physical power. To Anne's view that destruction can only destroy. Yes, sir.
Ms. Parul Yadav, that was an excellent presentation on George Bernard Shaw, certain concepts which we have not known other than the facts that he was the greatest playwright. This was excellent. Your performance was really excellent. I would like to invite the other participants to present their questions if they have any. Will there be any questions to Ms. Parul Yadav? Thank you so much, Ms. Parul. It was a really beneficial session which you have given. Thank you so much. And I would like to call upon Mr. Ekta Chahal, research scholar from NILM University, Kaitar, Haryana.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, of course. Welcome, ma'am. And
Thank you.
your title will be Contemplation of Gandhian Thoughts in Sagal's Storm in Chandigarh.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Before to start, I would like to welcome respected resource person, other dignitaries, and all the scholars in the present session. A very good afternoon to all of you. My topic for the presentation is Contemplation of Gandhian Thoughts in Sagal's Storm in Chandigarh. Before directly getting to the Nayanthara Sagal's work, I would like to recall Gandhiji's principle and his ideology first. There are people who do their best to make this world better. But Mahatma Gandhi is one of the most glorious people who played a role in the history of India and the history of entire humanity. Of course, Gandhiji witnessed the hardships of his people since his early years. There is hardly any area in the pre and post independence era that he had left untrammeled for the sake of Indian development and independence. Gandhi believed in the principles of the truth of God, and considers that the love for fellow men is the only basis to enact right human relationships. He was not a theorist, practitioner of morals. He achieved this through self. His sense of non-violence changed the concept of politics. The masses adored him. But when it comes to practice, the human nature, in its true form, surfaced with all its ugliness, forget his good teachings of. Gandhiji tried his best to remove communalism, which is another form of violence. The communal riots took place, leading to the damage of public property and the loss of lives. Communal differences are yet a wound, not a septic infection, but wounds have a propensity to reproduce sepsis. We need to develop self restraint from anger and ill will, immoderation of thought and speech, and from every kind of violence. The only way to honor his ideals is to accept and indoctrinate his way of approach, reconciliation, and tolerance. Now, let's come to the center of my paper. Nayan Nandita Sehgal, an Indian writer, writes in English, a member of the Nehru Gandhi family. She is the second of the three daughters born to Jawaharlal Nehru's sister. Sehgal developed a reputation for maintaining her independent critical sense. She was awarded the 1986 Sahitya Akademi Award for her English novel Rich Like Us. Nandita Sehgal was drawn towards Gandhiji not only because of Jawaharlal Nehru, who counseled the political destiny of his own family, but also because of Sitaram Pandit, the father of Ranjit Pandit, who in many respects was Gandhiji's teacher. In her continuous fidelity to Gandhian idealism, has not only inherited but also cherished certain values and attitudes towards life, which can be best described as a complex amalgam of political liberalism, social sophistication, economic composure, and cultural magnanimity. Sehgal in Storm in Chandigarh exhibits the re-establishment of fundamental needs of man, such as love and understanding through communication and Gandhian values of peace and codes of conduct in national progress. Storm in Chandigarh was published in 1969, present the political background and after the partition of Punjab at the time of independence, the state was once again divided in two Punjab, the Sikh dominion, the Haryana, which is the Hindu dominion. But Chandigarh became the common capital of both states. From the very outset, an air of tension and trouble looms large between these two newly formed states of North India. Both Gyan Singh, the Chief Minister of Punjab, and Harpal Singh, the Chief Minister of newly created Haryana, were highly critical of each other. Gyan Singh infuriates common people by linking the history of pre-partition Punjab to post-independence Punjab and manipulates them to strike to achieve immediate gains to be in power. He does not hesitate to opt for violent means and money power to achieve his vested political interests. He calls for a general strike to demonstrate his strength. The union deputes Vishal Dubey, an ICS officer in the Ministry of Home Affairs, to bridge the gap between the two chief ministers, which although never happens. In fact, Gandhiji considered politics as a branch of ethics and religion. It is not a strife for power and wealth, but an interminable venture of millions to attain good life, to raise the quality of human beings, to train them for freedom and fellowship, for spiritual depth and social harmony. On the contrary, Harpal Singh, the Chief Minister of Haryana, who not only laboured Gandhian values in his exuberant but also practiced them in his personal and professional life, he is driven by a nationalistic as a secular and primitive unity representing larger expectations of the people. And he has to accept the division of the Punjab under political pressures. It is a radically a conflict of ideas, the cult of violence and axiom of non-violence. When the situation takes a crucial turn between the two states, the central which was called the last surviving figure of Gandhian era, refers the task of settlement between the opposing sides to Vishal Dubey, who was an honest central officer, who is known as troubleshooter in this case. Immediately after assuming charge as a central officer, he makes the plans with his subordinates for the peaceful resolution of issue between the two warring states. He delegates power to his local civilian officers and moves them actively to calm down the turbulent situation. Dubey operates from his philosophical convictions and acts through common sense. But he questions the integrity of the politicians. He is suspicious of sustaining Gandhian philosophy in post independence India, and he also laments the sudden demise of his mentor, the Home Minister, and muses with genuine sadness. He stated that old bonds had done his share and more would be considerable, the most that a nation could give a hero. It would mark the end of an era known as Gandhian. In politics, that had meant freedom from fear, the head held high, the indomitable will in the emancipated body of India. Gandhian politics had also meant the open decision, open action, no still, no forgiveness, and therefore no shame. Every act proudly performed in the sunlight. The Chief Minister of Punjab at that time, Gyan Singh, calls off the strike when it turns into intermittent violence. Harpal Singh gets shot and wounded amid the disintegrating crowd, emotionally overwrought. He gets self-purification in the Gandhian tradition, but finally Vishal recreates peace between the two states through his moral determination. He acts without hypocrisy and pretense. The violence and tension in contemporary Punjab, Chandigarh simulates the trauma of India-Pakistan fracture at the time of partition. Vishal Dubey mirrors some of the actions and philosophies of Gandhi and finally succeeds to establish peace after so many hardships. And to conclude my presentation, I can say that Storm in Chandigarh, in which Saigal reveals herself as a social and political visionary, most seriously with all her positive heroes revealing shades of Gandhi in them, is highly commendable. Her novels are infused with a urge for freedom and assertion of individuality. Her firm belief in Gandhian ideal of non-violence as a way of life is augmented actively. And in words, in my common language, I can say that I really want to use this platform to state that in present scenario, I strongly believe that we really need to recall those Gandhian principles in every sector, like in politics, like in religion, like in community, and others also. Thank you so much for listening me very patiently.
Thank you so much, Ekta. I think your words, the vocabulary that you have used, it was so highly animated that it brought back the old scenes, the old Esther years to our eyes now. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I would like to invite any questions from the other participants in the audience to Ekta. Would anyone like to present their question? I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Ms. Ekta Chahal.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
sir.
much. And I would like
So
to
sorry to
invite
interrupt, sir. Sorry
Mrs.
to interrupt.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir,
Go ahead, ma'am.
sir, this is Sri Vidya. Do we have any other link, sir? Actually, I am in session 4. Do we have any other link or this is the link where we have to join, sir? I'm in session 4, Sri Vidya Lakshmi.
No, ma'am, you will have to join here. Actually, we are,
This okay, okay. Okay,
yes,
sir.
ma'am,
Okay,
we'll
sir.
be going.
I thought I
You'll be
have
coming, you'll
joined.
be appearing
Okay.
shortly.
Okay,
No, ma'am,
no,
you are
no
right, you are
issue,
right.
sir. No issue.
We'll
Thank you,
be
sir.
coming
Thank you.
shortly. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Sure, sir.
Next, I
Sure,
would
sir.
like to invite I would like to call upon Mrs. Ruxana Begum to present her paper. Mrs. Ruxana.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. Good afternoon to one and all present here. I have taken a topic on Kamala Das, the old playhouse. Actually, I am inspired by the writings of Kamala Das. She is an Indian author. Actually, she is a famous Malayalam writer. I will share my screen and I will present you. I would like to present my paper. I have just created a PowerPoint presentation with the visual images. I can explain you clearly. That's why I have created some visual images so that you can understand the what are the thoughts of Kamala Das. Actually, Kamala Das she is born in Kerala and she is a Malayalam writer and her works are famous in Malayalam. So she's like Kamala Das. Her famous work in Malayalam is Enti Katha and it is translated into English and she is a feminist writer. In her work Old Playhouse, she is getting married to a Malayalam man. She is from a Hindu Malayali family and she is getting married to a Malayali man. After her marriage, after her marriage, Kamala Das faces loneliness because when she was in her unmarried life, she has a freedom and she has even her mother Balamani Amma is a famous Malayalam writer. Her family has contributed their works to Malayalam literature and Kamala Das' works have been translated into English. She used to write in Indian English and Indian modern English as well as in Malayalam. So she knows to read, speak and write three languages and Kamala Das, in her poem, The Old Playhouse, it is written in the 19th century. We can compare the mental state of the woman during the 19th century and during the 20th century. Now, how the thoughts of women are at present in this century, but she is born in 19th century. Kamala Das is born in 19th century. So how those women were those days the mentality of women was like so like in this poem the line starts like you planned to tame a swallow to hold her in the long summer of your love so that she would forget not the raw reasons alone and the homes left behind but also her nature the urge to fly and the endless pathways of the sky. It was not to gather knowledge. So in these lines, she is captured by her husband because of she is married to her husband. Her husband is a capturer. I mean, she is being as a capturer in the hands of her husband and she do not have freedom and she faces loneliness. In her married life, she faces a loneliness. Like after that, she has to, the next line state as this, of yet another man that I came to you but learn what I was and by learn to grow but every lesson you gave was about yourself. You were pleased with my body's response, its weather, its usual shallow convulsions. You dribbled spittle into my mouth, you poured yourself into every nook and cranny, you embelled my poor lust with your bittersweet juices, you called me wife. So in these lines, Kamala Das says that her husband is a selfish person who does not love her and because of the marriage relationship the husband wants his wife to fulfill the romantic and erotic dreams of marriage life. So here Kamala Das wants freedom from the marriage life. She feels that her husband is a selfish and self-centered person who do not love her gently, but he expresses his love. Her husband expresses his love through a wild nature, which Kamala Das doesn't like. So the women of 19th century, how they felt. And these lines of this poem, The Old Playhouse by Kamala Das, Alice Kamala Surya, I was taught to break saccharin into your tea and to offer at the right moments the vitamins covering. So she is born in a Hindu Nair family. Kamala was born into a Hindu Nair family, and she has to cook and give whatever lunch and breakfast, whatever to her husband. After that, in the evening, she has to serve whatever snacks to her husband. So she writes these lines. After that, she has to do all her household works because it's a marriage and she has to do all her household works. The house is like, it's like the house is without the lights. The house is without the lights and the windows are always shut. Her husband does not want to open the windows. Kamala Das' husband does not want to open the windows of the house, and he wants only artificial lights to be present in the house. So Kamala Das feels that the house is like haunted. The house is like haunted for her being in that old playhouse. So playhouse with all its lights put out. The strong man's technique is always the same. He serves his love in the lethal doses. For love is Narcissus at the water's edge, haunted by its own lonely face, and yet it must will the mirrors to shatter and the kind night to erase the water. Here the Kamala Das, her husband pours the love into her in lethal doses. Like the husband is a selfish and self-centered person. As Kamala Das, in this poem, Kamala Das writes about her own autobiography. It's about her own autobiography, and finally, in the old playhouse, she feels that she's suffocated, isolated, and lonely, and she's in a sadness because her husband rules her. She is a captive in the hands of her husband. Here you can compare the 20th century woman and 19th century woman. The 20th century woman, like you can say that 20th century woman, like we are free, and but the 19th century women, how they were captive in the hands of their husband. So I would like to present one more. I would like to tell few more details about that. Just a minute. Here, like Kamala Das, she born in 19th century and she died in the 20th century. But her works are famous in the 19th century, and she has reverted to Islam religion. And then Kamala Das has written so many poetries in modern English named Ya Allah, and so many poetries regarding her 20th centuries. She has written so many Malayalam poetries as well as in English, and this old playwright, in this you can compare with this poem. I would like to compare the thoughts of 19th century women, how their lives were, and at present the 20th century women's life, how we are. Like this 20th century women has a life of freedom. They can express whatever they want. They cannot be kept as a captive in the hands of a husband. But if you see Kamala Das, she is a 19th century woman, even though she is born in a high profile family. But being even a woman born in a high profile family, but she is being captive in the hands of her husband, and she is such an educated woman, but she is unable to express the feelings of her towards her husband, that she wants a freedom from the marriage life. This Kamala Das is a writer who used to express freely about her own autobiography. I would like to open my paper, but I am unable to open the paper. Just wait for a few more seconds so that I can open this and I can explain you clearly. So Kamala Das, like even as a high-profile woman and born in a family of writers. So like those days in the 19th century in India is like those days India, like it was like underdeveloped country in 19th century. So it's a developing country. So she is a writer born in India, but during the 19th century, like she was those days women will not express their feelings if they have any kind of anger or bitter feeling towards their in-laws or towards their husband, they do not have that boldness to express the feeling, so that is the reason that but even though Kamala Das she Kamala Das has but even though Kamala Das has successfully she has written this, and she would like to. So Kamala Das has successfully she has written her thoughts, whatever her thoughts are, she has expressed in the poem that old playhouse, and she has been so controversial because she used to write about her own life. That like people won't be expressing about their autobiography in 19th century. Nowadays, you can see so many films like about CM. Past CM or about a PM or any autobiography like Bhagat Singh, a legend, or so many people, so many famous people, celebrities. They are, they are taking a film and they are writing a novel on autobiography. But in 19th century, it was so difficult for people to express their own life to the public. So here, Kamala Das, she expresses her.
Excuse me, ma'am. Professor Roxana.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. It was a very good presentation, ma'am. And I would invite the audience to present their question to Professor Roxana. Does anybody have any question? I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Professor Roxana. And
Thank you, sir.
Next, I would like to call Ms. Gayatri Srikandavel, PhD scholar, EFL University, Hyderabad.
Yes.
Yes,
Good
Ms. Gayatri, you can start the presentation.
Good afternoon, one
And
and
I have
all.
a humble request to the participants. Could you kindly limit your presentation to 10 to 12 minutes, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, very much. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, one and all. I would like to share my PPTs.
ओपन इट नहीं हुआ, देखिए नहीं मैम मेरा पीडीएफ।
Is it visible? It is with great pleasure to be here and to present a paper on questions of untranslatability and problems of understanding other cultures and anthropological perspective. This is a humble attempt of a descriptive study by shedding light on the questions of untranslatability and the problems of understanding other cultures. Power becomes a question in translation and writing culture. This study views the influence of power relations in understanding other cultures, which leads to the question of untranslatability. First of all, it outlines the relationship between anthropology or ethnography and translation studies and the influence and operation in one another. In some circumstances, they are identical. Through the conceptualization of cultural anthropology as translation, it is observed that power relation has an influence in understanding other cultures, and gradually the questions arise regarding untranslatability. Translation studies has a relationship with all the fields and it is an interdisciplinary area of research. In this respect, it has a close relationship with anthropology as well as ethnography. Both translation and anthropology focus on how people perceive and the end product. Ethnography is a method generally employed in anthropology where they write about culture. Anthropologists go and live in the community they are studying in order to write about the people of that community. It is indeed a translation of that particular community. Translating anthropology is another dimension to look at the relationship between translation and anthropology. The resources related to anthropology are being translated. It is like translating the knowledge of anthropology and ethnography. The knowledge that is produced and generated by anthropology is translated from one language to another, or even one science system to another science system. As translation studies does with any discipline, it looks at the challenges, issues, problems, barriers, feasibilities, and non feasibilities of translating anthropology. Apart from this, translation studies also can employ ethnographic method. When the translation happens, the person who conducts the study may go and live with the people to pursue the ethnographic work as a field work. For instance, while subtitling a film, the translator sit with them to observe the process and perform the task. To this extent, ethnography is regarded as translation, as well as ethnography as method is employed in translation studies. And some of the sources, notes, documents, and such materials have to be translated, especially to narrate the culture in anthropology. Therefore, translation studies and anthropology as a discipline and ethnography as a method are interdependent. Both share relationships by going with some commonalities, features, and objects of inquiry, even to the extent of being identical to each other and enriching one another in a better way. This study intends to highlight the questions of untranslatability through a descriptive approach. This study also cites some strategies and techniques spelled out by some scholars involved in cultural translation to understand other cultures. Anthropologists integrate data from cultural, archaeological, linguistic, and biological fields and insights from many other disciplines. Anthropologists have to be dependent on the collected ethnographic data. Ethnography represents the thinking behind the language and practices. While doing so, they live in that community and to communicate in the local language, they either learn or employ translators as mediators. Nevertheless, the close association with those people give an acquaintance of the language. When the etymon of the term ethnography is traced, ethno means culture and graphy stands for writing. So, writing about other culture is ethnography. In other words, ethnography is basically writing the other cultures. Writing other cultures is not an easy task as some concepts are not available in every culture. Missionaries, administrators, and travelers learned and lived like the people of that community and wrote about these communities. They compiled the corpus of literary works and grammar of the languages along with a systematic lexicographic contribution. We can perceive this transformation itself as a translation, as they wanted to know about these people and started collecting information to administrate the subjects. Ethnographers go and live with the community as a member of that community to study the people either as an ordinary man or as a superior anthropologist. When the anthropologist is from the same cultural practice or from a similar community, the possibility for accommodating in some culture is high. The anthropologist can adapt himself or herself as per the
Ms.
traditions,
Gayatri,
norms, and practices. Sir?
thank you so much for your good presentation. I would like to ask the other participants to present their questions to Ms. Gayatri. Any questions? I think that's it. Thank you, Ms. Gayatri.
Very good afternoon. This is Dr. Shankar.
Sir?
So the presenter have been presented about certain things about this anthropology as well as the cultural changes with the studies. What is her conclusion regarding the presentation?
Yes, the conclusion is there is a power relations between the anthropologist and the people from that community, right? So there are three stances. The anthropologist can consider himself as a superior person. Then there are possibilities from the people's perspective to hide some things. They can do a real research when they maintain a power relations while translating that culture. They should study in order to study that culture. They should live with them, and then only the translation of that culture will be a commendable one.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you so
much,
much.
Ms. Madhuri.